Hello, my name is Eric Ramos-Nino, and I'm going to be talking about how high-performing computational models of visual cortex are marked by high effective dimensionality. So it's now well established that CNNs are currently the best models of visual cortex, but it's less clear as to why that's the case. Does it have to do with their architectures, the learning algorithms they're trained with, the data they're trained on? Well, what we find in this work is that the performance of these models is strongly correlated with a relatively simple property: the effective dimensionality of their features. What does effective dimensionality mean? Well, intuitively, it's a measure of the number of principal components needed to explain a set of responses. The diagram shows an example of 3 response profiles for a population of 3 neurons and the corresponding variance along each PC. Going from left to right, we see that when neurons are more correlated, a smaller number of PCs are necessary to explain their activity, and the effective dimensionality decreases according to the formula on the right. Our main result will be to show that better models of visual cortex tend to have higher effective dimensionality. How do we go about showing this? We first pass a set of stimuli through a CNN to extract a vector of activations at a given layer. We then measure how well these layer activations explain neural data by training a linear encoding model to predict brain activity using the layer activations as regressors. Then through cross-validation, we can measure how closely the encoder's predictions match the true neural responses on unseen data. We then run PCA on the layer activations to compute their corresponding effective dimensionality. And then finally, we want to measure the correlation between dimensionality and encoding performance, so we repeat this process for a large number of models. And here in the plot, every point corresponds to one layer of one CNN. And to make sure these effects are robust, we considered a variety of different CNNs and layers, ranging from hand-engineered models to state-of-the-art deep nets. And we also ran our analyses on 2 very different neural data sets. The first being an fMRI data set collected from 4 human subjects, and the second, an electrophysiology data set with recordings from IT and V4 in 2 monkeys. Now, here are our main results. Each point in the plot shows the effective dimensionality of a model on the x-axis and its corresponding encoding performance on the y-axis. And what we see is that the 2 are highly correlated in both human fMRI and monkey electrophysiology datasets, with a gradual increase in performance as a function of dimensionality. So this simple representational property seems to be related to the quality of many different CNNs as models of visual cortex. Now, the electrophysiology data suggests that the relationship might not be identical throughout the brain. In fact, it appears to be stronger in IT, a high-level region, than in V4, a mid-level region. So what actually happens when we break up our fMRI results by region or by voxel? Well, what we end up seeing is very similar trends, with the lowest correlation, though, in early visual cortex. What we can conclude is that the relationship between effective dimensionality and encoding performance is remarkably robust throughout visual cortex, though perhaps less strong in low-level regions. Now, one possible skepticism of these results is that they may have more to do with the statistics of linear encoding models than with the brain. It's not unreasonable to think that higher dimensionality means more features, and that more features trivially leads to better regression performance. So to address this possibility, we also measured the quality of the CNNs as models of visual cortex using representational similarity analysis, which involves no parameter fitting at all. Here we're again showing the correlation between dimensionality and performance, except that performance on the y-axis is measured using RSA. But despite this difference, we still observe a strong relationship very similar to before. So our results aren't just a natural consequence of fitting regression models. Now, finally, we want to see whether or not this relationship could help us identify better models of visual cortex. In other words, if we directly optimize for dimensionality, do we end up with better encoding performance? To test this, we used a recent self-supervised CNN called Barlow Twins that yields high dimensional representations. During training on the left, it's given 2 different views of the same image, for instance, 2 different crops, and a loss function then encourages the outputs for these different views to be similar, as in contrastive learning. However, it also encourages different dimensions in the output to be uncorrelated, leading to high dimensionality. Now, in the plot on the right, we compared encoding performance of the same CNN optimized for dimensionality, as in Barlow Twins, versus object classification. And what we see is pretty striking. As expected, the dimensionality optimized model in red has much higher dimensionality than the classification model in blue. However, it also achieves substantially better encoding performance. In fact, this model now has the best ID performance IT performance on BrainScore. So not only does dimensionality correlate with performance, but it actually identifies the best encoding model on a benchmark with over 100 submissions. What can we conclude from all of this? The first thing is that effective dimensionality is a simple representational property that strongly correlates with model performance. This also can't be dismissed as a statistical phenomenon of linear encoding models, since representational similarity analysis yields very similar results. And finally, if we optimize a model for high dimensionality, we actually achieve state-of-the-art encoding performance in explaining IT on BrainScore. Of course, this also suggests many directions for future research. To name just a few, we plan on characterizing the relationship between dimensionality and other CNN properties, developing a theoretical explanation for our empirical results, and exploring other notions of dimensionality. But to chat more about all this, I invite you to our poster session. Thank you.